All right, guys, it's 9:15. I'm going to get started today. It's Valentine's Day Sunday, and we have a very Valentine's lesson today. It's like a typical Valentine's Day for me. You know, there's going to be some laughing, some crying. Somebody's probably going to be angry at me by the end of the day, especially women. We'll see how this goes. No, but I thought we would open the day with the Babylon Bee. I don't know if any of you guys read some of their stuff. It's hilarious. They had yesterday a series of biblical Valentines, and since one of them was Jacob creating his own inspirational line of Valentine's Day cards for Leah, I thought perhaps we had to include that this week. So I put this one together with Brock. Nothing says I love you like I love you almost as much as your sister. It really hits you right here. So anyways, so let's get started in our summary from last time. So what we had last time, Genesis 26 through the middle of 27, was Isaac deals with the Philistines. He digs wells, is comforted by God's direct promise, and is deceived by Rebekah and Jacob. So there was dealing, digging, directed, and deceived. And the storyline summary was Isaac deceives Abimelech again with the sister trick. God confirms his covenant to Isaac. Isaac starts digging wells. Isaac becomes prosperous enough to get kicked out, and then enough to be courted back in. Isaac's covenant with Abimelech at Beersheba, and Rebekah's big deception to get the blessing for Jacob, and Esau marries the Hittite women. So, that's going to go to bucket number 2. Now let's tackle the one for today. So I asked way too late this week about getting a title together for this week, so we'll have to put that one together after. James suggested one. So here's what James suggested this morning. Jacob went to Paddan Aram to take a wife from the house of Bethuel, while Esau marries an Ishmaelite to attempt to gain his parents' favor. Jacob heads for Haran, and on his way he stops to sleep. He has a dream, and God promises him offspring, as many as the dust of the earth and the land on which he lies. So give some thought to try to shorten it up a little bit so that it fits in the title line. But that's pretty good. So what happens? Genesis 27, we started at verse 18 last time, 18 through 28. What's the first thing?
Jacob deceives his father.
Jacob deceives his father. I'm going to add, at the behest of his mother. What next? How about Isaac blesses Jacob? Then what happens?
Esau is very distraught.
Esau is very distraught. That's putting it mildly. I'll add on discovery of the deception.
Jacob flees to Paddan Aram.
Yep, Jacob flees. On the way, what happens?
Jacob has a dream.
He has a dream of Jacob's ladder. Anything else to add to this one? Anything else in my notes? I guess we could say Bethel, because Bethel comes up again this time. It's the house of God. Jacob's under the impression that that must be where God is. That spot's particularly important. All right, you guys good with that?
Jacob makes a vow.
Jacob does make a vow, that's right. Jacob makes a vow to God. His vow, remember, it was very ironic. It was like, okay, I'll let you be my God. I'll give you 10%. You promised me all this stuff. Oh, yeah, you can be my God. I'll let you, you know. Little did Jacob know he's about to enroll in deception graduate school with Uncle Laban. So. All right, guys. Well, that's good. We'll head to next item. So let's open up our Bibles and we'll get started. We're at Genesis 29. So one of my goals for today is hopefully by the end of the day, all of us can really identify and understand what each of these characters are going through and feeling in this story. Because it can be a little bland, I think. And I think one of the best ways to remember things is identifying with the characters involved, putting yourself in their shoes. How would I feel? How do they feel? You know, that kind of stuff. So we're going to see how that goes today. So first off, 29, Jacob is on his way. He's met with God, right? He's headed north. He's headed up there. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. And he looked, and he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered. The stone on the well's mouth was large, and when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well, and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. And Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" And they said, "We're from Haran." He said to them, "Oh, do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" And they said, "We know him." He said to them, "Is it well with him?" And they said, "It is well. And oh, see, Rachel, his daughter, is coming with the sheep." And he said, "But behold, it is still high day. It's not time for the livestock to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go pasture them." But they said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well, and then we water the sheep." While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Now as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, I gotta flip my page. His mother's brother, Jacob came near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman, and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. You definitely see how quickly Jacob was transformed from the man who lives in tents to the man who's now commanding stranger shepherds what they need to do and rolling the big stone away from the mouth of the well. And what was the difference? Rachel. A girl, that's right. She said a girl. Women inspire men, that's for sure. For better or worse, generally what you inspire us to do is not always what actually you find attractive. But we as men usually think, I'm going to go roll the stone away from the well, and then she's going to love me. And then he kisses her and cries. This had to be awkward. Right? He doesn't know her. She doesn't know him. He's just this stranger that took charge, and now he's telling everybody what to do. And then he kisses her, and the first thing he says, "Oh," you know, it would be a fun movie scene, you know, to watch at the movie theater. But I do think a little part of this is I do think Rachel sees this as her princess story. Like probably what he told her was basically what she's hearing is, I've grown up hearing about Aunt Rebecca, right? This stranger that came and the rags to riches. Now she's basically a princess in a foreign land, and now like it's my turn. Like I get to be the princess in the foreign land. So even though this weird guy was crying after he kissed her, she ran to tell her father. So. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, verse 13, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. And Jacob told Laban all these things. And Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him a month. And then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." And Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man, so yeah, stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. Now that might be a good Valentine's card. Like, I'm willing to serve 7 years for your crooked uncle, just for you. That is one of the most romantic sentiments in the entire Bible, right? This man, he's like, I will devote 7 years of my life because I love you so much. And it may have been initially an infatuation with how she looked, but this was 7 years. I mean, the sexual drive part of this story surely wore off very early on in the 7 years. And from then on out, I think Jacob really did love Rachel. You see that the rest of his life. He loved her with everything that he had. And he spent the 7 years, and it just seemed like nothing. And you can imagine what they did during those 7 years, right? There weren't television. There was probably a lot of walks, late night walks, a lot of flowers, hanging out, talking, a lot of date nights for the 7 years. You get the sense that they became very close. Except for one thing. Rachel's completely silent. The Bible never says whether Rachel loved Jacob. And I think by the time she gets married to him, and she's stuck in the combative relationship with her sister, I'm not sure she was even capable of loving Jacob. Because all of her feelings were Jacob. I don't think she could disentangle them from the competition with her sister. It sort of took this pure, beautiful thing that could have been the Isaac-Rebecca story, right? They both did love each other. And twisted it into this, my love for Jacob becomes my way to outdo my sister. It's the thing I have, and she has the children, So it's never clear how Rachel felt about Jacob. So, verse 21. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, that I may go into her, for my time is completed." So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went in to her. Laban gave his female servant to Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her servant. And in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" Laban said, "It is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years." I'm sure when Laban said that, he was thinking, Jacob, you know how much the firstborn is. Right? You know what the firstborn means, and we don't do it that way. So Jacob did so, and completed her week. And then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. And so Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and served Laban for another 7 years. There's a whole lifetime of pain wrapped up in that one little sentence. He loved Rachel more than Leah, for every single person involved. So as I said, Uncle Laban is his major professor in deception graduate school here. The deceiver goes to be taught by the master. I think everybody's first question is, how exactly did this happen? How did he not know, right? Obviously, Leah probably minimized her speaking, right? Jacob probably didn't notice, I'm guessing. He was a little preoccupied. There were no lights back then, right? We didn't have light bulbs, so nights were pitch black. There was nothing to see by in those times unless you had a fire. And given the normal cultural practices of the time, Jacob was probably drunk. He just had his wedding, right? They had a lot of wine, and now it's time to go to the tent. And he is 100% trusting. There's nothing in Jacob, the deceiver, who thinks, I could be deceived. I need to check things out. And can you even blame him for the mistake? I mean, she was wearing a veil so that he couldn't see her. He was basically blind. She brought in meat, and she was wearing goat fur so that he thought it was Esau. Oh, no, that's what he did to his dad in the exact same situation. Live by deception, die by deception, right?
And it is interesting to think they're siblings, you know, the uncle and then his mom.
Yeah, that's true.
I wonder, like, I don't know, what was it like for them growing up? I mean, when you use your imagination, you just start thinking, what was okay in their household, and how did that affect them? Because if they both go to that when they want their way, it's just, anyway, it's just interesting.
That's true. There's deception all around here. Nobody's the good guy. So, it also is, I mean, I think it's the ultimate irony. Poetic justice here is that in all this deception, Jacob falls prey to the sibling swap. Jacob, the architect of the sibling swap, fell prey himself to the sibling swap. So, I still feel bad for Jacob, but the things we don't know is how complicit was Leah. Was this Leah's idea, as this is how I'm going to get a husband for myself? Or was this Laban's idea and he kind of forced Leah into it? Was it Laban's idea and Leah just went along with it? What in the world did they do with Rachel? She just had her wedding night. I'm sure Rachel was there during the wedding night as if she was the bride. And then did they tie her up? Like, how? I mean, that had to be a bad night for Rachel, right? Because she knew what was going on. She wasn't with Jacob. But this is another sign of the antiquity of this story, because in Leviticus 18:18, it is explicitly forbidden to allow anybody to marry sisters. You are not allowed to marry sisters, and I think by the time we're done with the story, we will all agree God did a good job in making that law. But if this had been written after Leviticus, you know, then they never would have said these two married their sisters. This is probably what happened. All right, so verse 31. When the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, because the Lord has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me. And so the word name Reuben, you see in the footnote, says it means, see, a son. Reuben was very happy with that name. My name commemorates Dad's lack of love for Mom, and Mom's attempt to lord it over my aunt. She conceived again and bore a son, and she said, because the Lord has heard me, that I am hated, he has given me a son also. And she called his name Simeon. And she conceived. Simeon, of course, sounds like Hebrew for heard. That's why she said, the Lord has heard me. Again she conceived and bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will be attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. And therefore his name was called Levi. And Levi sounds like the Hebrew for the word attached. And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, this time I will praise the Lord. And therefore she called his name Judah. And then she ceased bearing. Judah sounds like the Hebrew word for praise, it says. All of the patriarchs of Israel had this problem of barrenness. Every time that they have a child, except matriarchs, I mean. Every time they have a child, it's a miraculous event. Like, God is miraculously involved every time. So Rachel, unfortunately, gets the short end of the stick here. And, you know, Leah's very prolific. But can you feel Leah's pain as you go through the names of those children? Whether she was complicit or not, there was a part of her every day that had to think, maybe my husband will love me. What can I do to get him to love me? I see how much he loves Rachel. I want that for myself. And the names of her very children go from, oh, this is why he didn't love me, I didn't have a son, to now, no, there's really no reason that he doesn't love me except just for me. I've got so many sons. The thing I was deluding myself into thinking that would make him love me didn't work. And why didn't he love her? The only thing the text really says, other than he was deceived by her, was just that she wasn't as attractive as Rachel. I have lived long enough to know that the way a man determines his self-worth by his job or his capabilities in something, right, like how well he can achieve something, is almost equivalent to how a woman feels her self-worth by her appearance. And that's why they spend so much time on it, right? Like, feeling unattractive with nobody to console you is a very deep pit for a woman. And this was every single day of Leah's life, to the point that the names of her very children reflect this sad reality for her. What a toxic environment this is. And just to think that, well, maybe after Rachel dies, maybe he loved Leah after Rachel died. Let's jump to Genesis 49. We're going to read verse 28. Or we're going to start, well, we might start a little bit further down. Let's start at verse 29. So Jacob is at the end of his life. He's given this blessing to his 12 sons. He's ready to die. And he says in verse 29, "Then he commanded them and said to them, I am to be buried, to be gathered to my people," meaning I'm going to die. "Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah to the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite, to possess as a burying place. And there they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife. And there I buried Leah." There's no "my wife." Even to the very end, he couldn't admit she was his wife. Her whole life was wrapped up in that, unloved by anybody but her own sons. The only people who love Leah are her children, and I think maybe we can get a little bit of an inkling here as to why in that culture sons seem more important to women than husbands. Remember Lot's daughters, right? They just wanted sons from their father, right? So they got him drunk and had sons. What is it all of us want? Is to be loved unconditionally by someone, right? That's what women are looking for. Deep down, it's what men are looking for. And in this culture, men and women, I don't think generally did love each other very much, right? It was arranged marriages. It was learned to be with each other. The only males who would give a woman unconditional love were her sons. And Leah got that from her sons. They loved Mom. You never see, in fact, Reuben later brings her some mandrakes, like, maybe this will work for you, Mom. Go for it. I wish Dad would love you. But she does at least have some love. But it also shows you now how Rachel discounts the love of her own husband, wishing she had the love of her sons, as she sits around and watches Leah's sons love her that way. And you know, we read this, it's been about 5 minutes. We read this in 5 minutes and move on to the next part of the story. These people lived this every single day, when they woke up in the morning, when they ate lunch, when the sun was going down, and when they went to bed. For years and years and years. So let's start back in on 31. "When the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb." Oh wait. I already read that. 30, thank you. "When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, 'Give me children or I shall die.'" There is an irony in that statement. How does Rachel die? Childbirth with Benjamin. When she gets children, that is the death of her. "And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, 'Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?' And then she said, 'Here's my servant Bilhah. Go into her, so that she may give birth on my behalf, that even I may have children through her.' So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. And then Rachel said, 'God has judged me, and has also heard my voice, and given me a son.' And therefore she called his name Dan." And it says in the footnote, Dan sounds like the Hebrew for judged. "Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. And then Rachel said, 'With mighty wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and have prevailed.' So she called his name Naphtali." And it says Naphtali sounds like the Hebrew for wrestling. So his name was Mom Hates Her Sister. When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. And then Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, "Good fortune has come." And so she called his name Gad. And it says that Gad sounds like the Hebrew for good fortune. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, "Happy am I, for women have called me happy." So she called his name Asher. It's a good name for a kid, I hear. So, do you feel what Rachel feels, right? Leah felt like she got the short end of the stick the whole time, right? Rachel had all the love, and all Rachel sees is the sons that Leah has. Rachel wants to be a mother more than anything, and it is killing her. And her vindictive sister reminds her of it every day in the names of her kids, and while she's watching them play and doing stuff for their mom. But I have a theory that men and women read this story differently when they hear what Rachel says to Jacob and what Jacob says back to Rachel. So we're going to explore that theory a little bit and see, maybe by the end, the men understand the women's point of view and the women understand the men's point of view a little bit better. I think what Jacob hears Rachel say there is not what she means. They need a translator between man speak and women speak. Like that. If you've ever seen the movie Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs, have you ever seen, the dad has like a headband he puts on, and now all the fishing metaphors get translated into actual like nice things to say about his son, and then his dad and son can now get along and talk. Like, we need this for men and women. I think, now you women, this is the man trying to figure out what the woman means by what she's saying. Okay, so you guys can feel free to tell me I am wrong. I think what Rachel means is that she is desperate, and she's depressed, and she's lonely. I think she means I'm depressed, and at my rope's end, I don't know what to do but cry. And I've cried for years, watching Leah with her boys every day, and I'm exhausted with crying. Somebody, anybody, please help me. All I want is a son. And what Rachel needed from Jacob in that moment was a hug. Somebody to tell her, this situation stinks and it's not your fault. And you are loved, no matter how many children you have. I think that's what she meant, she wanted to say to Jacob. But what Jacob heard was, I have a problem and you have to fix it. Because when men hear a problem, as women share, it is involuntary that we look for solutions. As men, when we talk about problems with each other, the way we sympathize is offering a solution. We give some ideas, like, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? But I'm pretty sure that women hear the offering of solutions not as the sympathy that we think we're offering, but rather as a discounting of the value of their pain, and a phrase that no man has ever said in his life, an invalidating of their emotions. So for men, I'm going to help explain what invalidating emotions are, what it means. And for women, to help you understand why men don't understand this. As men, from the minute that we are old enough to walk, we learn to distrust our emotions. All right? Our emotions tell us to rape, pillage, and plunder. That's what our emotions tell us to do. Very early on, when you act on those emotions as a man, you are corrected immediately by your parents, by society, by the other kids around you, and you learn very on, my emotions lie to me the bulk of the time. But men, I don't think it's the same for women. Their emotions don't tell them to rape, pillage, and plunder. They lie to them in different ways, but they don't lie to them nearly as often. So women grow up learning to navigate the world by trusting their emotions. You look to how you feel about a topic to figure out what to do about it. So when a woman says that she feels something, that means she's sure of it, and your responses or solutions are invalidating the feeling that she is relying on to navigate life. But if a man tells you he feels something, he means he's unsure of it, and he's looking for guidance. It means my feelings, I'm trying to figure out if they're right. we are just so different as creatures. We grew up in a culture that said men and women were all basically the same, right? Which led to the mess that we're in now. We're not. And unfortunately, we do not even have adequate language to express that between each other. We use the same language, but we never hear what the other one is saying, and this is the source of every marital argument that's ever happened. Am I right? So, Jacob, Rachel, Leah, these are just a peek behind the veil of this, male-female dynamic, I think. And the emotionality of men, I will say, my wife got me the world's greatest Valentine's Day card.
No.
This is how men experience Valentine's Day.
Just bacon.
Have a Valentine's Day. The inside says, sorry to get so emotional. I love Ron Swanson, if you've ever watched Parks and Rec. That guy is absolutely hilarious. But anyways, so yes, this is men's emotions versus women's emotions. If you want to feel better, go remember Jacob's line of Leah's Valentine's Day.
Almost as much as yours.
All right, so Jacob here, he feels cornered, right? When he hears her expressing this and she's kind of lashing out and saying, it's your fault, she's meaning, help me, do something for me, he feels cornered. So the more that Rachel's tone put Jacob in an impossible position, the more she was really forcing him into a corner where he felt she was holding him responsible for something he couldn't control. And when a man feels that, he's going to lash out the other way. And that's exactly what Jacob did. As Sun Tzu said in The Art of War, if you've ever read that short little book, never back your enemy into a corner. Always leave them in escape, lest they become desperate and overcome you. She didn't leave Jacob in escape, and so he reacted. Instead of backing up, deep breath, he just got angry. He listened to his emotions, right, and just reacted the way he felt. And all that happened in the end was both of them were angry and alone. As every one of these male-female arguments always end up. And as sad as that is for Rachel, I think we can understand Rachel a little bit better if we look at, in our modern day, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, I see it a lot in my professional life. We have an epidemic of middle-aged voluntary Rachels. In their 20s, they prioritized their career, and they were hoping the family would work out later. And they hit their 40s, and they realized that the career wasn't such a great husband. And now it's time to find a husband, but the husbands aren't there. And what they really wanted was to be a mom, and they didn't know that at 20. And it's pretty late for that now. And anybody hear the song that came out a few months ago by Kelsey Ballerini called I Sit in Parks? Has anybody heard that song? It is the anthem of this generation. Is a young woman who, she got divorced. She's a singer, famous country singer. She got divorced, and she wrote this song about sitting in parks on the weekends and watching the families play, while she, in her single, wildly successful country music career, is sitting on the swing. And I think this song can help us understand a little bit of the sadness that Rachel's in. Because she was a voluntary Rachel here. The song goes, now I cleaned it up a little. There are a couple bad words. I shrunk it down. It goes like this. So imagine a woman sitting on the bench, 40, alone, wishing more than anything she could be a mom just like Rachel was. I sit in parks, and it breaks my heart, because I see just how far I am from the things that I want. Dad brought the picnic, Mom brought the sunscreen, 2 kids are laughing and crying on red swings. We look about the same age, but we don't have the same Saturdays. So I sit in parks, sunglasses dark, and I hallucinate a nursery with Noah's Ark. They lay on a blanket, and darn it, he loves her. I wonder if she wants my freedom, like I want to be a mother. That's where Rachel's at right now. Except it's not her choice. But the ultimate irony of this entire story with Leah and Rachel is Leah wanted everything Rachel had, and Rachel wanted everything Leah had. If they had just swapped desires, it would have been an idyllic existence. Right? Rachel would have had the boys, Leah would have had the love, and you know what would have happened then? They would have both still focused on what they didn't have, instead of focusing on what they did. They were entirely the architects of their own misery. All right, so let's move on. Verse 14.
You made an interesting observation.
Yeah.
The fourth son, Judah, he's the one that Jesus eventually descended of. It's the one where Leah eventually said, you know what, I don't need to have my husband's approval. I'm going to praise the Lord that I have a son. And that's the line that leads to Jesus.
That is a very good observation. I agree. It's strange that that's the one good name. Like if you got to pick one of the names of all these kids here, you'd pick Judah. At least the praise one is a good deal, right? And that is the one that Jesus comes through. It's a really good observation, Dan. All right, so either I got that wrong and the women are like mansplaining. Like I can't believe he did that. But or hopefully we all have a better
That was
understanding.
like a TED talk for a young married.
Okay, all right.
Soon to be married.
Hey, it's Valentine's Sunday, so.
Yeah, that's right.
Good job.
Thanks. Have a Valentine's Day. All right, verse 14 of chapter 30. In the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." Mandrakes were supposedly thought to have this mystical ability to make you pregnant. And the reason is because they look like this. That's a mandrake. Use your imagination what you think maybe that is when they pull that out of the ground. There's another mandrake. There's another mandrake. Bonus, mandrakes are poison, and if you crush them up and drink a little, it has a very strong hallucinogenic effect. And if you drink too much of them, you die. So it would not only make you think that this is a fertility plant, right, but it would make you kind of really loopy and, I don't know, LSD-like while you're experiencing it. And then, so they would put them under the bed, thinking that that's going to make us more fertile. So that's what this mandrakes thing is about here. But she said to her, I'm not going to leave that picture up there. It's just a root, guys. It's just a root. But she said to her, "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband?" Now, who took away the husband in the first place? Leah took away the husband, right? So that's what Leah says to Rachel. "Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" And Rachel said, "Well, then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." There's some chance that the reason Leah quit bearing was because Jacob quit sleeping with her. Like, it doesn't say explicitly, but this may be Leah finally gets another shot at it. So, when Jacob came in from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." Which, by the way, in the Valentine's Day cards for men, I'm just saying, if you would like to give your husband one that says, "You must come into me tonight because I've bought you in exchange for my son's mandrakes," he will not be unhappy with that Valentine's Day card. So, thank you, Babylon Bee, for the idea. Those guys were great. All right. So he lay with her that night, and God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. And Leah said, "God has given me my wages, because I gave my mandrakes, or my servant, to my husband." So she called his name Issachar. And Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will honor me. Not love anymore, at least honor, because I have borne him 6 sons." So she called his name Zebulun, and afterwards she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son, and said, "God has taken away my reproach." And she called his name Joseph, saying, "May the Lord add to me another son." Even when she finally got the son she wanted, all she could think about was, Leah's score is higher than mine. I'm going to name this one, I hope I get a bonus. Poor Joseph. He was born into a very toxic place. I do want to point out, the mandrakes don't work. Who had the mandrakes? Rachel. Who conceived that night? Leah, right? So, this is the Torah's way of telling the pagan mystical society, magic is not what's going on here. God is the one that's in charge of this, not your pagan mystical mandrakes. 25. As soon as Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away, that I may go to my own home and my country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, that I may go. For you know the service that I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If I found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you." Did the divination work? It did work. Told him the truth, right? This is why I've become rich from you, is because God's blessing you and I'm getting the spoils. "Name your wages and I will give it." Jacob said to him, "You yourself know how I have served you and how your livestock has fared with me, for you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also?" He said, "What shall I give you?" And Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later, when you come to look into my wages with you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen." And Laban said, "Good, let it be as you have said." But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in charge of his sons. And he set them a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. So this little circle I drew up here around Paddan Aram, that's the 3 days' journey. All of the stuff went from there to at least 60 miles outside of that city. We're talking Logansport to Plymouth away in 3 days. They were also booking it with herds of goats. So there was no way Jacob was going to get there. Laban was such a nice uncle. Then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the sticks. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred where they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks. And so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped, and all the black in the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flock he would not lay them there. So the feebler would be Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man increased greatly, and had large flocks, female servants, male servants, and camels and donkeys. And that is why to this day we always involve striped sticks when we have animals mating. No, that's not. In fact, we learn in like one chapter that God gave Jacob a dream and said, "I'm going to make them all be striped and spotted." And I think Jacob must have done this for everybody else's benefit. Jacob the deceiver is like, "I'm going to make these sticks and do all this work, so when everybody else sees it, they're going to think like I'm in charge." And really it was God doing it the entire time. There are no magic sticks, to the best of my knowledge, unless God commands magic sticks. Maybe God told him to do that. It doesn't say that he did, but in the end it tells us clearly God made the stripes, not the sticks. So, in the end here, Jacob becomes wealthy. All of the patriarchs were wealthy. I think most people who read the Bible come away with a picture of wealth as if it's evil. And so if wealth is evil, why did God make Abraham wealthy, Isaac wealthy, and Jacob wealthy? In fact, if we look at, I won't turn there just to save a little bit of time since we're coming up on 10 o'clock, but everybody knows of the phrase from Jesus that it's easier for a rich man to go through the camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, right? We all know that one. And that's clearly, it's tough. And you understand why it is, right? Because the rich man feels like he doesn't need anything. He's not going to cry out to God for help because he thinks he's got all that he needs. But Abraham was rich, Isaac was rich, Jacob was rich. I think there's another story from Jesus in Luke 16 that does give a little pause as to maybe that's not the entire story. And that's the story of Lazarus and the rich man. When Lazarus is Lazarus is this poor beggar outside the house of the rich man, right? And the rich man walks by him every day, and Lazarus just wants some scraps from his table, and the rich man just ignores him the whole time. They die, and the rich man is in Sheol, or it says in Hades, and he is in a place that is full of fire, and it's burning and terribly hot, and he looks off in the distance, and up in the distance, in Abraham's bosom, there's Abraham and Lazarus, and Abraham's comforting Lazarus in the place that essentially is like heaven, right? It's wonderful, it's comfortable, and he says, please let me come up there with you, or just dip your finger in some of the water up there to cool my tongue, because I'm in anguish down here. Right? And Abraham tells him, he says, well, during your lifetime, you had all of the comfort. But during this man's lifetime, he had nothing but pain. And you didn't help him at all. And then of course, the man says, well, let me go back and tell my brothers. And he says, even if somebody comes back from the dead, your brothers won't believe him. They have the law and Moses, which we're studying. Let them look to that. But there are two rich men in that story. Who are the two rich men? The rich man in hell and the rich man in heaven, Abraham. Abraham was a very wealthy man. What was the difference? God. That was the difference. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God, but all things are possible with God. The difference between the rich man is the man who was counting in his own riches and who was not kind to the stranger, wasn't looking at the man sitting by his door, and the one whom God chose, just to say he chose him. It's God that is how all of us gets to heaven, rich or poor, because we're all sinners. So I think that's one reason why we can look at this as Jacob getting rich. Laban even got rich off of Jacob, right? It's not necessarily that it's bad. What I do think money is a catalyst. If you are headed away from God, money will speed you away from Him faster than anything else. And if you are headed towards God, money can do an awful lot of good, right? We need money to run the church. We need money to help the poor. We need money for a lot of things, and if you don't have it, you can't give it. Yeah?
In the context of the story, we'll need to build a nation.
That's true. He's going to need all of this wealth to actually, of course he's going to lose it until he gets it from Egypt, but then they have that wealth and use that to build a nation. That's exactly right. So it's not that it's inherently evil, it's that I think it's a catalyst. We're going to stop there. We'll pick up chapter 31 next time. Jacob's desperate flee from his uncle Laban. We'll do 31, 32, we may try 33. So there's going to be the flee, there's going to be some wrestling with God, and a reckoning with Esau coming up next week.